Hello, friends. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you so much for tuning in today as we engage in a time of sharing and celebration of this wonderful season that we're in. This season of gift giving, of gift receiving, this season of Advent, this season of Christmas. All over the world you're streaming, and we're so grateful for your constant support, and we're elated about this opportunity to share the message and get this message to you. I've missed seeing you, looking forward to seeing you very soon, and just know that you're in my prayers and highest thoughts. As we're in the season of Advent, and it is a season of great expectancy, a season of anticipation and celebration of the great birth, and it is the birth of the Ha in the Hawaiian culture, which means breath, the birth of spirit, the birth of God in man, in woman, in human. We're celebrating not only the birth of the historical birth of Jesus Christ, but we're celebrating the birth of the Christ in us. As it is written, though Christ be born 1,000 times, the poet said, if Christ is not born in you, in us, in me, our soul is all forlorn, in a state of looking, in a state of confusion, of being lost and feeling lost. And so as we're in this season of Advent, of anticipating some great things, expecting some wonderful things to occur, not only in our lives individually, but in our lives collectively, in our nation, in our world, we are given a message of hope. It is the message of the good news of hope today, and that's what we want to focus on. I know that there are many divinely inspired writings. I have studied a number of wonderful books, a number of wonderful writings, and I often gravitate to certain writings, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, the Kabbalah, the Tao. There's a passage in the Bible that speaks to us today, and I invite you to just hear it. Not only hear it from a literary or historical perspective, but hear it from a very spiritual perspective today as we consider this season that we're in and the good news of Christmas today. It says, the Spirit of God is upon me because God has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. God has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of God's favor and the day of God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of heaviness or a spirit of despair. They will be called the oaks of righteousness, a planting of God for the display of God's splendor. Here ends the reading. And this is a wonderful text. It's really a mission statement. The master teacher, Jesus, actually stood one day in the temple when he read from the scroll of Isaiah and used these words to proclaim his own mission. This was his mission. He says, this is why I'm here. I've come to bring good news to the poor. I've come to bind the brokenhearted, to set the captives free. And as we consider this in this message today, the message of the good news of hope, that's a wonderful message for us to use that we can actually engage in to help change things in our life, world, and affairs. I would like to just ask you to consider these 4 questions. 4 questions just for consideration. How many of you believe that there's truly something that you can do right now that could make your personal life, your home life, your community life, your family life worse? I did say worse. Yes. How many of you believe that there's something that you can do right now that could make life worse than what it is? How many of you believe that there's something that you can do right now that can make your personal life, your family life, your community life, your church life, your spiritual life, your professional life better? Yes, better. Do you believe that you have the choice, that the choice is yours? Do you believe that the choice is yours? And the 4th question is, do you believe that every choice has an end result? Well, friends, this is the good news, that we can choose, and our choice today will determine the outcome and the ultimate experience that will be for us and come to us. It's nothing new. We teach all the time, thoughts held in mind produces after they're kind. That whatever we're holding, the predominant thought that we think about, that we hold in consciousness, that will become part of our collective experience. Whether it's better or worse, whatever we feed will become part of our manifested experience. It reminds me of the story told of the Eskimo in the coldest regions of Alaska, where they used to host dog fights every Saturday. And there was one Eskimo, one owner who had a black dog and a white dog, and every weekend, every Saturday, these dogs would go at it. I mean, they would really go at it. And years would pass, days would pass, months would pass, years would pass, and the dogs just got tired of fighting. And the owner decided to retire the dogs. And one day, a villager just happened to be passing by and talked to the owner. He says, I used to attend those dog fights, and I'm not promoting dog fights, not by no means. I'm just using this to make a point. He says, I used to attend those encounters on Saturdays, and he says, it was something unusual always happened. One Saturday, the black dog would win. Another Saturday, the white dog would win. But regardless to which dog won, you seemed to always win the bet. And the villager asked the Eskimo, well, how did you know which dog would win? And the owner of the dog said, well, that's easy. I knew the dog that I fed all week would win. Friends, that's exactly how things happen in our lives. Whatever we feed, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever we feed, the negative, the positive, whatever we feed, that will live in our life. And we often say that our attention is the oxygen for the thing to live. When we give it our attention, when we give it our concentration, we give it our thoughts and our words, our praise, we're talking about it all the time, that's the oxygen for the things to live in our life. We have a choice as to what we want to feed in our mind. And what we want, where we want to be, where we are, it's a matter of what we're choosing in our very own mind, and we can change anything that we don't want to see. I invite you to join me in affirming this affirmation. I am born anew to the knowledge of Christ in me, my hope of glory. Together. I am born anew to the knowledge of the Christ in me, my hope of glory. And in this season of Advent, in this month of December, which is our month of regeneration, and it's a wonderful month as we're closing out this year of 2016, which is the universal 9. The energy of the year has been that of completion. And some of you have probably been experiencing completion in various aspects of your life, world, and affairs. Whether your job has come to a completion, you've made a move, you moved from one place to another, you moved maybe out of the city where you were into a new city. It could be that the relationship has come to an end. If there's been an ending at all in your life, and it could be that life is calling you to end some things, maybe ends whatever aspect of life that might be. The year of 2016, the universal 9, is that number of completion. As we're preparing to enter into 2017, which is the number of new beginnings. 2 plus 1, 0 plus 1 plus 7, 10, which is a number of new beginnings. So we're preparing for some new experiences, new opportunities, new possibilities, new potential to occur in our life, world, and affairs. And this season is a wonderful time to get ready during this Advent season, a time of preparation, of preparing for this newness to happen in our life, world, and affairs. It's often said that it's one thing to have an opportunity and not be prepared for it. It's one thing to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one, but it's a travesty to get an opportunity and we're not prepared for it. So we're preparing now. And if you're really ready for something new, something profound to occur in your life, in your world, and in your affairs, get yourself ready. Get ready for it. You have right now in your life, we are experiencing right now in our life, world, and affairs exactly what we are ready for. And I often hear this people say in conversation, well, I wish I had this. I wish I could experience that. You will get it the moment you get ready for it. Friends, we first get ready in consciousness. Consciousness. You get ready in your awareness of it. Get the mind ready. Get the heart ready so that when it shows up, you're truly prepared to experience the good and you're not thrown off course. You're not off kilter. You've been preparing. I love it, these entertainers, these young entertainers and athletes. Yeah, there are those who might not agree with their mode of the method or the route that it took for them to reach their success. But they're in their mind all day long, playing the games and going over their music. They're doing it. They're building it and getting it in their mind. They're getting themselves ready for it so that when the opportunities appear, they know what to do with it. We're called to do the same things, to write the vision and to make it plain and to wait on it. And the good news of hope calls us to do that. Hope is a precious commodity. It's a precious human commodity. It's a gift that we've been given to empower us to move through difficult times that we have. It's wonderful. So awesome how God has constructed us, made us, put exactly what we need on the inside of us, that when we need to use it, it's there. But we have to learn how to use it. You don't need to ask for any more faith. You don't need any more strength. You don't need any more hope. All you got to do is do what Paul told Timothy, is to fan well into flame the gifts of God that you already have. Use the faith, the hope, the strength, the love, the wisdom, the joy, the good judgment, the imagination. Use your life force. Use what you have that God has already put on the inside of you. Many of us have probably used this word loosely. I hope things work out. I hope you have a good day. I hope things will go my way. Well, friends, it can really be tough. It can really be tough to live and even make it through the day without hope. And until we really exercise the hope, and you see people all the time, how you're doing, they're just struggling. They've lost hope. Let's define the word. Dictionary.com sort of gives a few definitions of the word hope. Hope, to wish for a particular event that one considers possible. To wish for. To have confidence. To trust. The longing or desire for something accompanied by the belief in the possibility of its occurrence. Well, for the purpose of this message, let's define hope as a vision. Hope is a vision for better days that changes us in the present. I have a vision. Hope is the vision and the anticipation of better days that changes us in the right now, in the eternal now, in the words of Paul Tillich. Hope tells us that there's something ahead, around the corner, in sight, and it is good. That's what hope does for us. Although you can't see it, although you can't define it, although you may not be able to put your hand on it right now, hope says that there's something better, something bigger, something greater around the corner, and it's good. And hope requires something of us, friends. When hope really gets a hold of you, it requires of us. Hope is that on the inside of us that insists that despite the evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it, if we have the courage to work for it, and if we have the courage to fight for it. You might have to labor for it at times. And labor is, first of all, laboring in your mind. Jesus says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. The field of life is plentiful. Abundance is here for everybody, but everybody's not willing to pay the price or do the work. And the first work is getting in the field of your mind, as Lord Krishna tells the warrior, Lord Krishna told the warrior Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that the greatest battle that man will ever fight is on the battlefield of his very own mind. It's easier to control the wind than for man to control his very own mind. Friends, we got to get in the field of the mind and work. That's what hope does for us. Hope helps us to cease from worrying and stressing. It's like the man who was always worrying and stressing about anything. He was just worried. He stressed about everything. Just couldn't find peace. And one day he came up with a solution. And his friends came around and they noticed that he had changed. He was used to stress and worry all the time. And they asked him, oh my goodness, what happened to you? You used to stress, you lose your hair, you're breaking out in hives, but you're not stressing and worrying about stuff anymore. What happened? The man says, well, I hired me a professional worrier. They said, you hired a professional worrier? We've never heard of that. He says, yeah, I've hired a professional worrier. So he does all my worrying for me. And his friend says, well, how much does that cost? He says, well, he charges $100,000. And the friend says, how in the world can you afford to pay this man $100,000? And the man says, I don't know, That's for him to worry about. Friends, when we get hope, and when hope gets a hold of us, we cease from worrying and stressing. Doesn't mean that we're not concerned. Yes, it's one thing to be concerned, but it's another thing to be anxious and stuck in worry and fear and anxiety. And we see that happening now in our society, in our nation, with some of the recent shifts and occurrences. There are people, maybe people that you know, and maybe you've been some of these individuals, who have been stressed out and worrying about life today and how life is going to continue to be and show up for them as citizens, as citizens of this country, as people who abide here, whether they immigrated here or whether they're here legally or quote legally or not. There are those who are concerned about their life today. Those who are feeling as though they are marginalized and disenfranchised. Those who feel as though they are foreigners in their own land, strangers in their own land. But there's good news today. And the good news of hope says that if you can get the belief that something better, that in spite of all that's going on, there's some good in this for me. I love what Mary Kupferle wrote in her book, God Will See You Through. She says, make up your mind that regardless of what's happening, there is good in this for me. There's a popular song that's out, gospel Christian song out now, and it's called Intentional. All things are working for my good. God is intentional. And what from the passage in the Hebrew Bible says, what man might mean for bad or for evil, God can take all of this and turn it in for your good. And that's what hope does. Hope empowers us, enables us to seek the good, to find the good in it, and to stand on the good. Hope means hoping, having confidence in that desire that things in the face of hopelessness. It's still hoping, having the belief and the desire coupled with the confidence in the face of hopelessness. You can be going through what's considered a hopeless situation. And hope really isn't hope until you're in the face of hopelessness, what appears to be hopelessness. It reminds me of the story. It says that there was a school system in a very large city that had a program that helped children who were hospitalized. And they wanted to ensure that these kids did not fall behind in their studies. So they started this program, and they hired teachers who were there just to work with these students who were there in the hospital for a period of time. And the story is told that there was a hospital teacher who heard that there was a child in the hospital who'd been there for quite some time, and she went to the child's classroom teacher, to see what could she do to help the child. So she goes to this child's regular teacher. The regular teacher tells the hospital teacher, listen, I would greatly appreciate it if you will make sure that little Johnny is caught up on his nouns and adverbs. We're studying this now, and so when he returns to his class, he's not behind. He's still, he's going right along with his peers, and he'll be caught up. And so the hospital teacher goes to the hospital, and she goes to visit little Johnny, and no one told her about his situation. And she wasn't prepared for what she saw when she entered his room. She entered the room, and no one told her that Johnny was in a fire and that he had been burned. Over 90% of his body had been burned. And she's there, and she's talking to this child who seemed lifeless, trying to teach him nouns and adverbs. And she left that room, left little Johnny's room, feeling that she failed, that she was of no use, of no good in trying to help reach him. The next day, she goes to visit little Johnny and to continue these tutoring sessions. And the nurse approached her as soon as she stepped on the floor. The nurse asked her, well, what did you do to that little boy? And all of a sudden, the hospital teacher became quite concerned. She says, oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I don't know. The nurse says, no, you don't know what I mean. You don't understand what I'm saying. She says, we have been trying to get this child to fight for his life. We've been trying to get him to eat and to just help us help him. And she says, it was up until yesterday that he had no sign. He wasn't fighting at all. But since you were here yesterday, he's been fighting. It's like he has the will to live. And she says, we just want to know, what did you do to change everything for him? It says 2 weeks later, little Johnny was able to talk. And he says that he had reached a place of giving up on life. that he thought that there was no hope. He was in constant pain, and he knew that of his situation. He heard his family and friends talking, the doctors talking around him. And so he had just given up on life. But he says, when the teacher came to his room to teach him nouns and adverbs, he said he knew then that his school system and his teacher would not send a teacher to teach a dying child about nouns and adverbs. Because the teacher, his regular teacher, and the school believed that he would be better, that he would get well, that he would return to school, that gave him hope to believe for himself. Friends, that's what hope will do. When hope gets a hold of you, your life will change. And some of us, we don't need to pray for them. You don't need to pray for money. You don't need to pray for a house. You don't need to pray for an opportunity. Pray for a hope. Pray that the hope that you already have springs forth. That belief and that desire, coupled with the confidence that something better is around the corner. You make up your mind that that's what you're going to have. It takes guts to hope. Sometimes you got to dig down deep to get a hold of hope, just to keep going and to keeping on. It reminds me of the poet Ellen Bailey, who says, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is funny with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up. Though the pace seems slow, you might succeed with another blow. Someone asked, Jack, what are we supposed to do? How is it you can use hope? How are we to be hopeful when we're facing difficult times? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to handle hard times? Friends, there are three things that I want to offer you today that may help you during this season of Advent, to utilize the good news of hope, the gift of hope, to help you move through those trying and hopeless, difficult times. The first thing is that we must have faith. Paul says in his words in Romans chapter 4, he says, we must have faith to call forth those things that be not as though they were. To be able to look at these appearances, it could be looking at the body that appears to be sick and weak, and then begin to call forth health and healing. Scripture says, let the weak say, I am strong, and let the poor say, how can you say that I'm rich when you're in the face of poverty and lack? But that's what hope does. Faith is the ability, the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen, that you have the faith that it's possible. And that's all we got to do sometimes, just believe that it's possible. Whether you can see it, whether it happens or not, but just have the faith that it's possible. We do not have the faith that judge by appearances. Let that kind of faith go. We don't walk by sight. Faith does not judge by sight. We walk by faith. We move as spiritual beings, as metaphysicians. And metaphysicians are those who go beyond the physical, and they can see the truth in the situation. They can see the spirit. They can see the divine. They can see the Holy One. They can see God at work in the situation. Do not judge your circumstances, your possibilities, or your future based on what you have now, or based on what's going on now. No, don't make that decision. Don't make that judgment. We have to be able to look hard times in the face, be able to stare difficult times down, and be able to mad dog trying times if you must. You know, mad dog. I lived in Los Angeles, served a church in Santa Monica, and I remember driving by this one particular area, and there were some fellas out, and if you drive by slowly, they would just stand out on the side with their arms crossed, just staring at you like, what do you want? Who are you? And, what's your intentions here? What is your intention? So they would stare you down. They called it mad dogging. Like, you want some of this? You want to step here? You got something you want to say? So friends, we have to be able to mad dog trying times. Look at those difficult moments and stare it down. So you want some of this? You don't want to touch this difficult times. You don't want any of this hard times. You don't want any of this trying times. Greater is he that is within me than anything that's in the world. When you step here at difficult times, you are coming you're preparing yourself to encounter God, because God lives on the inside. Friends, we have to be able to say, this is not the real truth. This is not the reality. We have to be able to do like the Camden Central High School cheerleaders used to do. And growing up, I just loved the Camden Central High School cheerleaders. Our team was called the Lions, whether it was a basketball or football. And anytime we were having games, especially home games, and the opposing team was there, and they thought that they were going to get ahead or make the basket in basketball, and they would have their people, their cheerleaders and people on this side of the auditorium, and all of the Camden Central High School fans, Lions fans, were on the other side. And so when the opposing team would get at the free throw line and they thought they were going to make the point that would win the game, the Camden Central High School cheerleaders will all line up in front of the opposing team. And that guy who was trying, or that girl who was trying to make a basket, and they would begin to chant this mantra, no, 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 no. And they would stand there in the face of the opposing team, in the face of opposition, and say, no, no. Try it out. No, no. You got to put that clap on it. No, no. And so whenever you encounter hopeless situations, when you encounter difficult times, when you encounter trying times, you have to be able to stand in your faith and your truth and say, no, no, you will not have power over me today. No, no, you will not cause me to lose sleep. You will not cause me to become sick or ill. I'm saying no to you because you are not the reality of me. I was in a conversation with a family member who told me just recently he was out shopping on behalf of the business that he works for, and he was driving the company car. He was so excited to do this particular work. Really, it wasn't required of him. He just wanted to go over and above his duties, expected duties and responsibilities. And he went shopping for some supplies to do this particular work at the company that he was working for, and said as he was getting into the company's vehicle to leave the parking lot, he noticed that there was a guy right behind the vehicle that he was getting in. The guy was there with his dog. It was an older guy of a different persuasion, and he noticed that the guy saw him get in the truck, saw the company's name and information on side of the vehicle, but the guy didn't make any effort to move out of the way. He was an older guy. And so my family member leaned his head out the window and says, "Sir, would you mind just moving over?" And before he could finish, the guy says, "Well, if you can't get out of this parking space with all of this room right here, you need to turn in your license." And at that moment, my family member made the decision. He says, like he knew exactly what that was. Friends, when you got to be ready and know when adverse consciousness is trying to come your way, when stuff is trying to come your way to throw you off course. So it says the family member says, "Sir, that's okay. Thank you. God bless you." And the moment he put the blessing on the man, said the man eased over just enough, and the family member pulled out of the parking lot and went on about his business, and was so glad, so grateful that he did not capitulate or conform to the world of that man, or capitulate and stoop down to that man's level. Had he engaged in that kind of energy, that vibration, and had he dropped down to that frequency, they probably would have had an altercation. The guy could have probably called the company and gotten the family member in trouble, or could have even lost his job because of that ignorance. But because the family member said, no, no, you are not having any power in my life today, he took the power from the man. And he realized that the power to choose was within him all along. He chose, made the decision to move forward and having a beautiful day, and he chose a healthier life. Friends, say no, no to the stuff that's trying to show up. The second thing that we're called to do, wherever there's full assurance of hope, there is faith. We must learn to speak truth over ourselves. Every day we should be speaking powerful words of truth over ourselves, over our family. Speak truth over your children, over your business, over your job, over your church, over your community. Don't agree with all of the negative images and all of the negative reports that you're seeing on social network media or through the news. Don't agree with that. Speak positive words of truth. Speak love and unity and healing. Speak life and light over your community, over our nation, over our world. Repeat after me. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I am going to make it. You wake up in the morning in the face of hopelessness. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I am going to make it. You can be in the hospital room. You can be given the worst diagnosis ever. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I am going to make it. You could be face to face with a hopeless condition. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I am going to make it. You go through the day, if difficult times show up, hard times show up, the most trying times of your life comes, make the decision that no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I am going to make it. Have faith. Talk to yourself and say the affirmation that I am going to make it in spite of. I've made it through difficult times before. I've made it through hopeless times before. The same God that got me through the time before will get me through this moment now. And then you exercise the third aspect of it, friends. Hope requires us to have patience and to engage in consistent action. Hope is not hope unless there is action. I love these words from Dare to Journey with Henry Nouwen. It says, sustaining purposeful activity. Hope is not just a vague feeling that somehow things will become better. Hope involves action, and action is what moves us toward the things we hope for. Hope inspires action, and action begins to realize our hopes. It reminds me of the Chinese bamboo tree. It requires patience, and it requires consistent engagement, consistent action. It says the Chinese bamboo tree starts as a hard nut. It says you plant the nut, and every day you have to water and fertilize the nut. Every day, for 1 year, watering and fertilizing that nut in the soil, in the ground, and nothing happens. The second year, every day, still fertilizing and watering this nut in the ground, nothing happens. The third year, the same thing every day. The fourth year, every day, watering and fertilizing that nut. The fifth year, it says in the fifth year, after watering and fertilizing the nut every day, the story is told, the legend of the bamboo tree, it says, in the fifth year, said the sprout, that seed produces a sprout that begins to pierce the ground, pierce the earth, and the sprout comes up. And it says in a matter of 6 weeks, that sprout that was a nut that got watered every day and fertilized every day for 5 years shoots up in a matter of 6 weeks to be 90 feet tall. Friends, that's what happens. That when we take faith, you take your desires, you take your aspirations, you take your dreams, you take your hopes, and you keep watering it. You keep fertilizing, putting the truth in the water and the fertilization that we put over the water and fertilizer rather, that we put on the nut of our hopes and dreams is our faith, is our spoken word of truth, is our positivity. And then your patience, you wait on it. Some things doesn't happen overnight. Yes, you may not be able to see it right now, but you wait on it and you trust God to fulfill God's word. They who hope in me will not be disappointed. Those who wait on the Lord will sprout up with wings as eagle. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. Friends, this is the message, the good news of hope today. Carry it forth. Use your faith. Speak positive words of truth. Be patient. Engage in consistent action. And you watch hope spring forth for you and change things in your life. Thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to a soon return. Until next time, God bless and Merry Christmas.